All right, welcome everyone to this session on Zero Trust Network Access, or ztna. Today I'll cover why ztna is so important, what problems it solves, or as the title suggests, its advantages, how it works, and what you should be looking for in a ztna solution. ztna is an important, new, and rather disruptive technology. One way to look at it is like ztna is to remote access, VPN, what an iPhone was to a BlackBerry back in 2007. It is obviously just a much better way of doing things in almost every aspect. So let's have a look and dive into what I mean. Now let's start with a view of the classic network and its protected perimeter. As you can imagine, trust is a dangerous word in IT, especially when that trust is implicit or when it's unqualified or unquestioned. Creating a large sealed off corporate perimeter like we have here and trusting everything inside it has proven time and time again to be a rather flawed design. Yet, this is how many networks have been set up, and in many cases, they still look like this. But times have changed, obviously, particularly over the last 2 years. This perimeter has eroded significantly. Users are working remotely from untrusted networks that may or may not be protected with any kind of firewall. They use SaaS apps, cloud platforms, and services, and a lot of our data is now outside this corporate perimeter. Everything is everywhere, really. And so this old model just doesn't work anymore. And of course, recently with the pandemic, it's really been a catalyst for even further change, making zero trust a hot topic. But why is that? Well, of course, we've seen a transformation in the way we work or live. Are we working from home or living at work? It's sometimes hard to tell. From a network perspective, I like to refer to this new world order as the branch office of one. Now, IT organizations aren't just dealing with the odd branch office of one. Many organizations now have hundreds or thousands or perhaps even tens of thousands of branch offices with one person in them. This has quickly become a significant challenge to connect and secure and onboard and decommission these branch offices of one that are constantly changing as staff come and go. It really has become a full-time job for many in a world where security is even more important and resources are even more constrained than ever before. Now, the traditional way you solve this disappearing perimeter and working from home is with remote access VPN. Now, with remote access VPN, you connect into the network. And as we discussed earlier, that means once you're on the network, you have all the implicit trust that comes with that, with potential access to other systems on the network. And of course, with VPN, device health is not a consideration. If you have a device that's been hacked or attacked, VPN's not going to prevent it from connecting. And the implicit trust that VPN provides means attackers on a compromised device that's using VPN now have broad access to other parts of the network. This all makes it an ideal target for a ransomware attack. And to make matters worse, there are vulnerabilities in most VPN client software that is out there on users' devices, and more vulnerabilities are being discovered all the time. And it makes it possible for attackers to exploit these vulnerabilities and use VPN connections to get a foothold on the network. And then, once they're on, they can move freely about the network as a result of that implicit trust. And here's just a few examples of recent stories I've found in the news of high-profile ransomware and other types of attacks that have all come about as a result of this new branch office of one sort of phenomenon. And one of the most costly and notorious ransomware attacks I'm sure you've all heard of over the last year was Colonial Pipeline. It really affected gas supply across much of the Southeast United States. And that was caused by a breach in a legacy VPN account. And so for every story, of course, that makes the news, we know there are dozens and dozens that don't get reported. So this is a huge problem. Now, the reason for this is fairly obvious. VPN suffers from a number of challenges we've just discussed, and that is creating a lot of interest in ztna. But let's put these challenges down here and flesh them out. So VPN was, first of all, never designed for this new world order that we live in, where everyone's working remote. It doesn't provide adequate security due to the implicit trust it grants, the broad access you get as a result of that, and the freedom to move laterally. It offers no accountability for the health of the device that's being connected into the network. And this, of course, as we just discussed, makes it a very attractive target for attacks. It's also very inefficient in how it manages traffic to services outside the corporate network through backhauling everything through your corporate network and then out to the VPN connection. Remote access VPN also doesn't provide adequate visibility into who's doing what on your network. And it doesn't scale well at all. It wasn't designed for hundreds or thousands of users, and it can be very time-consuming to manage as a result. And we all know from personal experience that the user experience with VPN is just anything but transparent. It can be slow, frustrating, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's certainly prone to fail at the worst of times. So what's happening? Well, more and more IT organizations or administrators are starting to do this on Google, not surprisingly. But the smarter ones are doing this, which is searching for ztna. Now, why is that? What is ztna? What does it do? Well, as I said at the beginning, it's designed to be a better way of doing things, a better alternative to remote access VPN, to better enable remote workers to connect to internal applications that they need on the corporate network to do their job. And it does so without trusting anything or anyone until they have proven they can be trusted. Hence the term zero trust. Now, ztna offers a much better solution in terms of protection. It eliminates those vulnerable old VPN clients, which ransomware is exploiting, so that removes a vector of attack. It effectively microsegments your applications by only allowing a user to access a specific application, not the whole network, which means that users or threats on the network can't simply just move around laterally from one system to the other, like they can with VPN. And it makes it much easier to scale and manage. It's been designed from the ground up to be a solution that scales, that offers services like this for hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of users without being a huge burden. It's really been designed from the start to address that issue. And so ztna has really been designed as the ultimate VPN replacement. Now you might be wondering, what kinds of applications does ztna control access to or work with? Well, it is designed to control access to applications or even data or remote access to systems that the company hosts itself. So these are on servers in your data center, a hosting provider, or in your public cloud infrastructure like Amazon Web Services, apps like source code repositories for developers, or test environments, or content management systems, or staging servers, or apps like Wira or the Jira or Wiki, or remote desktop access to systems or management systems like ERP or industrial control systems or monitoring systems, any of that kind of thing. What it is not designed to do is work with controlling access to public internet SaaS applications like Salesforce or Office 365. As you can imagine, these applications are hosted by the company that owns them. They're not hosted by you. These applications require different tools to control access to Secure Web Gateway or CASB. They are not the domain of a ztna solution because they are, public-facing apps hosted by the owners of those apps. So when is ztna the right tool for the job, and what other technologies do you need? So here's a good rule of thumb. If it's an application your organization sets up and hosts, you can control access to it, then ztna is the right tool for that job. And most organizations have dozens of these kinds of applications that their users interact with every day. Now, if you want to control access to the public internet, Facebook, YouTube, that kind of thing, then you need a secure web gateway. That's a capability, of course, that's built into almost every firewall, can be purchased through the cloud or even on your endpoint protection product. But that's a separate capability. And then if you want to control access and monitor data movement to important SaaS applications, maybe like Salesforce.com or Office 365, then you need what's called a Cloud Access Security Broker or CASB product, and that's another tool. So as you can see, ztna plays an important role in your overall security strategy. Every organization will have apps and systems that remote workers need access to, so every organization needs ztna, and it's the perfect tool for this job. Now, what are the advantages of ztna over remote access VPN? And I'm going to dive into each of these in a bit more detail, but in short, it uses the principles of zero trust. It incorporates the health or compliance of the user's device into access decisions of policies. It works anywhere and everywhere. It is much more transparent for end users, and it offers better visibility and easier administration. So let's start with the concept of zero trust or no implicit trust. What does that mean? Well, it's really just a different model of trust than that of that old classic perimeter network we've been looking at. In a zero trust world, no one and nothing is automatically or implicitly trusted, be it inside the network or outside the network, or even the network itself. Each device, user, and resource becomes its own micro perimeter and only allows access once trust has been established and verified and validated by multiple sources. And that trust is only granted temporarily. It can be revoked at any time. So trust is only established after the user's identity is verified and confirmed and the device health or compliance is validated. And then that can be used to control access or privilege with network resources that the user needs access to. So it really is like the old saying, trust now is earned, not given. It's a simple way to look at how zero trust works. And the concept of zero trust is such an important concept, and the way it's implemented has become so important that it is officially become a critical US government mandate as of a week ago for all federal agencies this year. Of course, this will ultimately get pushed down to suppliers that work with the US government as well. But regardless of government mandates, zero trust is just a much better way to operate. To see why, let's go back to our previous view of the network world that we were looking at and see how zero trust network access, or ztna, works differently. So now remote workers are no longer instantly trusted as soon as they connect. They and their devices have to earn trust. And another fundamental difference is that ztna only connects a user to a very specific application or system, not the whole network. So in this example, you can see that this remote user has access to a single data source inside the company, as well as a particular app in AWS and nothing else. They have no other access to any other system on the corporate network or elsewhere. Only those two particular resources have been assigned to them as accessible, and that's all they can access. And now with ztna, if a device becomes compromised by an attack, policy can prevent it from connecting to corporate network applications and data. It can effectively prevent them from connecting and, of course, prevent lateral movement and attacks from getting a foothold on the network. So ztna provides much better security than remote access VPN. Not only is it removing vulnerable old VPN client software off a user's device for good, but it's incorporating device health into the connection policy, and it's only connecting users to a very specific resource, not the whole network. All right, so how does ztna work? Well, there's three important components to the system. There's the management system, typically in the cloud. There's the zero trust endpoint agent that runs on the remote worker's laptop. Then there's the zero trust gateway that protects the applications and facilitates connections between the remote users and the applications they need access to. So when a user needs to access a network application, their identity is confirmed, device health is verified, and only then will the gateway establish an encrypted tunnel between that device and the specific application they have access to. And if either the user's identity or device health cannot be verified or become non-compliant, they will be refused connectivity until they resolve that issue. And from the user's perspective, it really couldn't be simpler. You log in using your credentials, confirm your identity through multi-factor authentication or MFA. Your device health is passed transparently along in the background. And if everything checks out, you're connected to your application that you need to do your job. Very seamless, very transparent, and much more reliable than old VPN. And another advantage that most ztna solutions offer over remote access VPN is because you're connecting individual users and applications and not just the whole network, you get much better visibility and insights into who's accessing what or who's doing what on your network. This can be helpful for capacity and license planning, as well as bandwidth utilization and a number of other metrics. So trust me, it's a very valuable asset to have. And management solutions, of course, can vary considerably from vendor to vendor, but in general, you will find that cloud managed ztna is much easier, much more scalable, far less time consuming than managing remote access VPN, which is typically done on your firewall. All right, so we've discussed all the advantages of ztna. What should you be looking for in a ztna solution? Well, I thought the best way to think about it is, what are the top complaints of people that have already adopted a ztna solution? So their top complaints are typically one of these three. First, there's typically requires another vendor. So they may have already a bunch of IT security vendors that they use, but ztna may have to come from another vendor, which means another management console, another agent to be deployed on the end user's device. And all of this can be just an added burden in itself. So most organizations are very reluctant to adopt ztna because they don't want to add more vendors to the mix and what is already a crowded vendor landscape for them. And next, there's often complaints about complex and expensive licensing. For some reason, some vendors make this more difficult than it needs to be by charging more for, say, gateways, multiple tiers of protection, driving the total cost of ownership up and killing the value proposition. So be careful to dig into the details of the licensing when you're shopping for a ztna solution. So naturally, my advice would be to look for aspects of a solution that solve these issues. So make sure the vendor offers a comprehensive cloud management solution that enables you to not just manage ztna from anywhere, but ideally it integrates with other IT security solutions you already have or need, so you can minimize the number of management consoles and vendors you need to work with. Then look for a solution that can ideally reduce the footprint on the end user's laptop device. This is great if you can find one which integrates the ztna functionality with other protection you already need on that device, like endpoint protection. And then look for simple, affordable licensing, as I mentioned. Look into the details of their licensing scheme. Make sure there's no hidden costs and that you're getting great value and ultimately great total cost of ownership. So of course, I'd be remiss for not mentioning Sophos' own ztna solution and how it helps make ztna easier and more affordable. And as you might expect, Sophos ztna was designed from the ground up to address some of the top challenges early adopters have faced that I mentioned. Now, management is all done through our Sophos Central Cloud Management Platform, which is also the same management console you use for all of our other products, enabling you to have one cloud management console for your entire cybersecurity estate, whether it's ztna, endpoint, firewall, mobile device management, email security, you name it, you can do it all from one console. And while our ztna agent will work with any endpoint product out there on the market, we have taken extra effort to integrate ours to enable a single agent deployment for customers that want both ztna and the world's best next-gen endpoint protection together in one agent. This reduces the footprint on the user's device, makes deployment super simple, and it also supports a unique feature we have called synchronized security heartbeat, which shares health information between the endpoint and the ztna parts of the agent, and even the firewall, to offer an automated response to any kind of threat that might pop up on that end user's device, which can limit their access not only to ztna connected resources, but to other systems on the network. And we have very simple, straightforward, affordable licensing. You purchase a simple per user subscription. Gateways are free to deploy as many as you need in as many locations as you want with as much redundancy as you desire. There's no added tiers or hidden costs, ensuring you're getting great value for your investment. All right, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your time, everyone. Have a great day.